Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning on Ara Damansara Medical Center's live session with Dr. Izwin Hassan. Dr. Izwin is an expert in memory matters. She runs a memory clinic at Ara Damansara Medical Center. Let's welcome Dr. Izwin. Dr. Izwin, please share with our audience a bit about yourself.
Oh, hello. Hi. I'm sorry, there's some technical problem, but I can't seem to hear you. For some strange reason. It was all working fine earlier, but I can't hear you.
Maybe it's your earphones, though? When you clicked in your earphones, because earlier you tested without your earphones.
Yes, I find.
Yeah. Hi, Dr. Izwin. Welcome on board.
Yes, right. I fixed it. No problem. Sorry about that. Yes. Okay. Sorry. Small technical problem.
You need to put your earphones on and activate your earphones, doctor.
Yep. Okay. Perfect. Yes. I think I've just unmuted that earlier. That's right.
No worries. All right. Please share with the audience a bit about yourself, Dr. Izwin.
Yes. So I'm
Malaysia.
Yes, my long journey back to Malaysia plus 2 weeks quarantine. Yes, so I worked in the UK. So I studied there when I was 18, and I've been working in the UK for about 15 years. Lived there for 20. It's been an exciting journey living there, and I did my training in psychiatry. I chose psychiatry because I really enjoyed working with people. After 20 years of working and studying there, I decided it's time to come back and contribute to Malaysia. So here I am working in Ara Damansara, as well as two other of the Sime Darby hospitals. And it's been really exciting last, I think, 7 months since I started work here. Yes, and I'm really enjoying my time here.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Izwin. Dr. Izwin, let's move on to the topic of the day, men's mental health. Please share with us your thoughts on this topic. It's a hot topic, mental health. The hospital has been requested by so many corporate clients to talk about their companies, people, and today we talk about men in particular and mental health. Just what are your thoughts on this?
Right, so men's mental health. So there's a lot of taboo around talking about mental health in general. And I think men especially find it very hard to talk about mental health and to also seek mental health support. Let me share a few facts with you, Mel, just to kind of help to demonstrate men's mental health. So men are 3 times more likely to commit suicide compared to women.
Okay.
In a study conducted in 2008 in Malaysia, they found that out of the successful suicide committed, 65% were by men. So that's a starking number if you think about it. Men are less likely to seek mental health support. Men are less likely to seek psychological therapies. And men are less likely to to talk to someone about their problems. They tend to keep the problems to themselves, and they actually, instead of the way that they cope with mental health problems and mental health distress is sometimes by alcohol and drugs. So men are 3 times more likely to use drugs and alcohol as a way of coping with their struggles and their distress compared to women. And men are also more likely to be admitted to psychiatric hospitals on a detention. They're more likely to end up in prison. So as you can see, the statistics itself will show that there is a difference between men and women in terms of mental health difficulties and how they cope with mental health difficulties.
Right. And what do you suggest they do? I mean, how do you think that when we have all these situations, so what do you suggest? Because there's a big stigma in the Malaysian community, right? Or even worldwide, actually. So what do you suggest?
Yes, so there is a big stigma, and I think the problem is sort of it comes down to gender roles. So in the same way that women have certain stereotypical gender roles. So, for example, people were saying, women being, should be feminine, should be in the kitchen, things like that. Men have also their own stereotypical gender roles that they feel as, in society that they feel that they have to follow. So they may feel that, being, seeking mental health support, having a mental illness in itself, they feel it's a weakness, that they should be breadwinners, they should be the strong person in the family, they should be the one that's leading everyone. And so they might find that having a mental health problem is a sign of weakness. So that's a barrier from seeking mental health support. When actually, to be quite fair, men have their own stresses that they have to deal with. They have to earn money, they have to go out and find a job, they have to also look after children. Gender roles are getting more and more blurred nowadays, and I think that makes it harder for men in some ways, because now they have more roles to take on rather than less roles to take on, and I think that can create quite a lot of stress as well.
Okay. And what are the options of mental health support that's available today? I mean, there's
Um,
this thing that if I go to a hospital, my employer might know, or my family may know, and I have to take medication. So, I I don't know. I leave it to you, doctor, to share with us what is it that you have experienced since you came on board October last year until now, the kind of what you've seen and how you intervene to assist and let people go back to being as normal as possible.
so there's a variety of help out there depending on the severity of the symptom, and I think at the end of the day it comes down to what the person feels comfortable with. So some of my patients feel like seeing a doctor, seeing a psychiatrist, someone working in mental health can be quite scary. There's always a lot of stigma in our own occupation itself. They always feel that if you see a psychiatrist, you're considered crazy or gila. I think some patients think I have a lorry at the back of my clinic that will take them to hospital. I usually show them that there's nothing behind here, it's fine. It's just a normal clinic. And I think the Simon W hospitals are very good at destigmatizing as well. Mental health, people sit down with, other conditions like, my clinic, for example, is set among, the heart clinics, the gastro clinics, so that, we're not a separate wing where you're kind of ashamed to be seen going into a certain place, a certain part of the building. So that helps to destigmatize seeing a psychiatrist in the first place. And secondly, I guess with pressures of work nowadays, with MCO, with jobs, I'm seeing more and more in my clinic things, for example, where the workplace is putting in a lot of pressure because they cut down the workforce, and they're trying to make the current workforce work as efficiently as possible. And when that happens, there's a lot of pressure for people in the workplace environment. I've had people come into my clinic and say, work is giving me impossible targets. And sometimes it's a subtle way of, I guess, trying to make you underperform so they can find a way to sack you. I don't know what's the meaning behind it, but it kind of adds a lot of pressure to people working, and the pressure slowly builds up. At first, you can manage the pressure, you can deal with it, but sadly, as it becomes worse and worse, people suddenly find themselves developing things like depression, anxiety, they can't sleep, they can't eat. And this is when they start to develop, mental health conditions, diagnosable mental health conditions. And they need to see a psychiatrist or a psychologist or a counselor. But in terms of seeking help, coming back to your question, Mel, it is about what the person feels comfortable with. So different professionals do slightly different things. So for example, if you see a psychiatrist, we're medically trained. So I'm a doctor, I can prescribe, I can diagnose, I can recommend therapies. If you feel that your symptoms are less severe, you might want to see a counselor. If you feel that offloading, speaking to someone on a regular basis is helpful, then you can seek those kind of help. If you feel that you need a bit more, your psychological symptoms are a bit more complex, a psychologist might be useful. So there are different places, different professionals that you can see to get mental health support. And of course, there are NGOs as well out there. There's Befrienders, there's Malaysian Mental Health Association, there's the Help University has a counselling service that people can access. So there are also volunteer organisations, NGOs that can help you. So there are a variety of support out there. So please don't feel scared or worried about accessing these supports.
Okay, there's always this concern that if I go to see a psychiatrist, this will be a black mark in my medical record, and my employer might know about it. How do we allay these fears about privacy? When a patient comes to see you in a hospital.
So I guess it depends on whether you are claiming. So some of my patients, they can claim this off their their employer's insurance. So I'm just talking about sort of private sectors, obviously. It can be a bit more discreet, perhaps within the government sector, where you don't need to, seek funding for your therapy. So things like, for example, some of my patients would prefer to pay out of their own pocket rather than claim from their employers because they don't want their employers to find out. And I agree, sometimes there is a bit of a stigma in terms of employers finding out about a person seeking mental health support. However, on the flip side, if the stress is caused by work and the employer, I encourage them to let the employer know that this is what's causing the mental health difficulties, because I can't help support the employee to make some adjustments or the employer to make adjustments. So people that come and see me, for example, who have stress related, work related depression, sometimes I liaise closely with the employers and kind of explain how they got to this place, how they suffer from depression from the work, and find ways that we can work together. Because with mental health problems, you do need to support the cause of the mental health problem. So if this is related to work, there might be work adjustments that can be made. Bullying is very commonplace reason that people become depressed, anxious, that comes and sees me in my outpatient clinics. Bullying from a excessive workload. So if there's things that we can do, there's things that we can adjust, then we should we should involve the employers. But if it's a case that it's something personal and they'd rather not share it with their employers, then it comes down to personal choice of the person. The person affected, what they want to do. I usually give them that choice and that option. Do you want me to let them know, or do you not want me to let them know? But at the end of the day, you are protected by patient-doctor confidentiality. I cannot release information without your consent unless I believe that there's a harm to yourself or a harm to others. So it does come down to how severe they are, and there are confidentiality rules around seeing a psychiatrist, a counsellor, and psychologist.
So I just want to go back to what you said about, I want to know your professional opinion on the work culture today and how it affects men.
So,
I know you sort of introduced it in the beginning, but yeah, if you could just elaborate on that.
So the work culture at the moment, I think the work culture has changed since COVID-19 pandemic. So we are seeing an increasing number of people working from home. Not necessarily a good thing for some people. Actually having that bit of distance, having that bit of time away from home isn't always a bad thing. But sometimes because of the current work culture of having to work from home, a lot of people are reporting a different type of stress. For example, having to deal with work and also helping their children with the PDPR sessions. So people are finding that stressful, feeling like they lack privacy, trying to do their work. If you've got a small house, trying to work in the different rooms can be quite difficult. And one of the work culture that's quite stressful for not just men but also women and a lot of people is trying to do everything at a distance. So I've got patients who say, when I was in the office, I can just go to the next desk and ask for help. If I don't know what I'm doing, if I'm struggling, And also they miss that social aspect of work, being able to eat together, being able to ask a friend, being able to have that face-to-face discussion. So the current work culture now of working from home can be quite stressful because of this kind of new norm, this new way of working, which, isn't necessarily great for everyone. And I guess the other thing about the pandemic is that there's a lot more demands. A lot of people feel that their job is at threat, and they're never certain what's happening, whether the work will go on. There's less money coming into the company. People are telling me they're not getting their bonuses this year, and financially that can be upsetting. So there's a financial stress as well added to the mix, and the workload increases as workforce gets cut. So people are increasingly finding that companies are not making as much money, and as a consequence, they're cutting down the workforce. They're laying off quite a few people, and suddenly, you're finding yourself doing 4 people's jobs, and that's extremely stressful. And also, people come and see me because they feel trapped in their job. They feel that they want to leave and find a new job, but because of the current economic situation, because of the pandemic, there's a new stress, which is there is a smaller there's a smaller choice pool in terms of finding new employment. So people feel trapped in jobs that they don't like. They're just kind of stuck there, Melinda, in a job they don't like, with people they hate. But they can't go anywhere because it's either stick in the job or be unemployed. Those are kind of the choices now. I've got patients coming to see me saying, it's been 6 months and I can't find a job, doctor. I left the job because it was causing me mental health stress, but now I'm unemployed, and this is causing me new stress because I've got no money and I can't find a job. So it's kind of almost a catch-22, and kind of that feeling of feeling trapped isn't very good for mental health.
Yeah, okay. So, audience, we have been on air for over 15 minutes. If you have questions, you can post questions, and Dr. Izwin, I will manage your questions, and Dr. Izwin will be able to answer for you. Questions from the floor it'd be good if you have, and it'll be private. We won't mention your names if you don't want to, and just let us know what your thoughts are. And while we wait for you to ask your questions, tell me, Dr. Izwin, what is the age range of people that you have been seeing in this last 7 months since you joined Ara Damansara Medical Center?
So by training, I'm actually a geriatric psychiatrist. So I mostly spent my time looking after older people, but having started here, I've kind of had to extend my age range a little bit, and I'm starting to see a lot of young, people, quite young people. So from age 14, all the way to, of course, old people, 90 years old is the oldest I'm looking after at the moment. And surprisingly, I'm finding a lot of young people are finding, their mental health situation has been severely affected as well, not just by the pandemic, but I think by the process of growing up, by the process of, finding their identity. So, the age range is quite vast that I'm seeing right now. Young girls seems to like me, I don't know why. But it's just kind of just being able to see a wide range and see how the different kind of stress is affecting people. And I'm looking at the Facebook comments as well, Melinda, about a lot of people saying it's not just men that's facing the problems I'm highlighting, and I agree, it's both men and women that's going through the same kind of stress of the pandemic that's causing them to feel the way that they're feeling now.
Yeah, what about relationships? Are these being affected, being confined in the home, being together all the time? Are you seeing cases like that? Apart from work-related stress.
Particularly me, not so much, but I know that looking at the statistics and recent news, Rumah Kasih, all the NGOs that looks after domestic abuse situations, have reported a rise in the number of help requests and telephone calls in relation to domestic abuse since the pandemic has started. So the stress of, I guess, financial stress, living together, not being able to leave the home and have their me time, those kind of things have led to an increase in things like domestic abuse. I'm also seeing more relationship issues as well. People arguing a bit more. Children finding the whole, children, young teenagers finding not being able to go to school, finding themselves in at home all the time, being quite stressful. I did a talk recently for my school, my high school. I'm an alumni of Kuala Selangor Science School. Special mention to my school. And I did a talk to some of these young people sitting for their SBM at the time, and a lot of them said it's really hard having to stay at home and having to do PDPR, because not only am I expected to be at home and do my studying, but I'm also expected to look after my brother and my little sister, do the household task. Whereas when I was in boarding school, all I did was study. And they're finding that balance very, very stressful, and getting quite a lot of young people feeling anxious and depressed because of the current situation. So, the being confined at home is not just the lack of social contact. You are also seeing how this kind of change in life norms is significantly affecting, a wide range of people.
Thank you, Farah Ong. Yes, I think Dr. Izwin has answered. Yes, it happens to women as well. To Genevieve Jua, she's asking, is overthinking a symptom of mental stress?
It can be overthinking ruminations, as I call them, when you think about the same stuff over and over again. Can be a sign of anxiety. It can be just personality, but I think when it becomes a sign of stress is when it's the first thing that you think about when you wake up. It's the last thing you think about before you go to sleep. When when the thoughts occur all the time, very difficult to interrupt. They're intrusive in nature. They may be related to anxiety, overthinking. It may just be your personality. If it doesn't affect your life very much, then it's nothing to be concerned about. But if it's making you have panic attacks, it's making you depressed. If overthinking is making you down, very down, very upset, crying easily, affecting your appetite, your sleep, your relationship, then it may be a sign that it's kind of becoming a mental health condition, and it's best to seek support, because there are psychological ways of managing overthinking and managing how you feel.
Yeah, that's what we want to do at Ara Damansara Medical Center. We want to educate people. We want to create awareness that if you are in doubt and you are not feeling there, that they should come and seek medical help with our specialists. And we want to put it out there that we are here to support them. We are safe. We'll protect their identity. And it's just like coming and seeing a doctor when you're having a flu and a fever. So I'm overthinking, or I'm stressed, I'm feeling anxiety, I can't sleep, it's playing in my head all the time. Come see one of our doctors, come see a psychiatrist, come see our psychologist, and let us help you. That's the message we want to take about. What about you, doctor? How would you build confidence in our audience today to say, hey, come and see me. Look at you. You're so bubbly. You say young people want to see you. And I can see why. You have a very attractive personality.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm very chatty. All my patients know that. Yeah, I talk too much actually. But I think, yeah, it's about kind of in terms of finding the right person. Sometimes what I say to people is, if you feel that seeing a doctor is quite a scary experience, again, I think the problem with being a psychiatrist, the name itself conjures up fear in people. That you're mentally unwell, and the myth is that if you see a psychiatrist, you're crazy. And I think this is the problem, is that people associate mental health with being crazy. And I just want people to know that, those are two very different things. Having mental health problems is it's because you're vulnerable. It's more common than you think. About 1 in 4 people will be affected by a mental health condition or a neurological condition at some point in their life, according to World Health Organization. You will most likely know someone with mental health problems. And with mental health, it's there's a variety, there's a spectrum of different types of mental health. It's not just what we think about when we say mental health is we think about psychosis. So people who say funny things, are seeing things and hearing things, and it's actually a depth of spectrum you have dementia, which is an organic condition. That's a mental health condition. They forget things. They have memory impairment. That's because of the brain. So it's, if you scan the brain, you can see abnormalities. If you do memory tests, you can see abnormalities, right up to things like, having autism or attention deficit hyperactive disorder in the young, so childhood developmental disorders. And you look at anxiety and depression, there's a whole host of different types of anxiety. So there's people who have, just a bit of anxiety, a bit of performance anxiety, social anxiety. And then there's people who have severe anxiety, the ones that I see. They come shaking in my clinic. They have severe panic attacks. Those are the sort of the types of different people that you see. But in terms of seeking help, it's about finding what's comfortable.
I think that we have a question on what are the major causes. If you can just maybe share some examples of the types of mental illnesses, that will be very helpful. Like you mentioned, dementia, perhaps some introduction to that would help the people to understand as well. Thank you, Sada, for your question.
Yes. Thank you, Sada. So dementia, for example, is a form of cognitive impairment. It's a global cognitive impairment. It can affect not just short-term memory. It can affect concentration. It can affect the abilities of someone to plan things ahead, to do the activities of daily living. So it kind of affects a whole host of different things. So people will notice signs like being forgetful, repeating the same story over and over again, not being able to look after themselves, and not being able to cook or clean or drive, things that they're quite used to. And those can be early signs that there's something wrong with their brain. That it can be an early signs of dementia. So that's something that that I see. That I did a lot of my training in as a geriatric psychiatrist. But we also see things. I also see things like stroke-related psychosis. So people who suddenly have bizarre thoughts because of a stroke that's happened to them, or people who have quite sudden onset mental health problems, doing impulsive things, early signs of bipolar, mania, for example, doing something impulsive, talking non-stop, not sleeping. So we see a whole host of types of mental disorders. To the people who have got, the more common ones that I see, of course, are your depression and anxiety person. So people who come in feeling low, feeling depressed due to a variety of host of problems. And there is a variety of different types of mental health problems at all. It's quite a broad term, mental health conditions. It can range from quite a lot of different things.
Okay, so
it's not just crazy.
So is medication required for depression and for all types of different conditions?
Not necessarily. A lot of mental health conditions are very treatable with just talking therapies. So seeing a counselor, seeing a psychologist, and what they can do is not just an outlet to release your pent-up stress, but they can also help you to think your way out of how you feel. So, for example, we look at the model for cognitive behavioral therapy. So the theory behind it is how you think affects your mood and affects your behavior. And for example, if you're feeling depressed or you're someone who's quite negative, you think negatively about a situation. So, for example, if about workplace, so you would think, right, I've got a presentation tomorrow. I'm really bad at this. I always, I'm going to embarrass myself. I'm going to get really stressed. So because you have that presentation, you get very down, you get very depressed because you're so worried about it, and you think it's going to go wrong, you think it's going to fail, and that kind of perpetuates your symptoms. Basically, you start to feel anxious, you have panic attacks, you get depressed, you can't sleep, you can't eat, and that escalates. I'm just giving a simplistic example. However, if you try and think it the other way around, so you have done presentations before and it has been successful, and people have enjoyed it, or people have given you good comments about it, then you can think your way, well, actually, because that's happened before and I've done okay, I'm going to think positively about it and things will be fine when I do the presentation tomorrow. So it's just about changing the way you think and flipping the way you think can greatly affect how you feel in terms of your mood. Of course, this is just a very simplistic example, but psychological therapies can help you change, or give you the tools and the skills to learn how to manage your mental health and your mood. Medication for certain conditions when it's very severe. So when I see people and they can't sleep and they can't eat, or they're having suicidal thoughts, I then make a risk assessment and a judgment whether do I feel that they can manage with just psychological therapies, or it's time for them to start medication. It's also about giving the patient options. Some patients come and see me and they say, I want medication, doctor. I don't want anything else. And then there's some patients who say, no, I don't want to take tablets. I just want to see somebody. What are the options out there? And it's about, giving them, making that joint decision with people. Not everyone who comes to my clinic gets a prescription. In fact, quite a significant proportion usually just gets me giving them advice, techniques, signposting them, recommending things like exercise, websites, places that they can go to improve their mental health. So it's not a case that, as soon as you come and see a psychiatrist, you'll get a prescription, and that's just about it. It's about sort of what the person needs and giving that kind of tailored, bespoke treatment plan.
Right. Doc, we have an interesting question from Abdul Malik. And because you traveled from UK to Malaysia in the midst of the pandemic, yeah, brave choice. Now he's asking, is there any difference in the term of pattern of mental health that you saw in UK versus what you're seeing in Malaysia?
Actually, surprisingly, I thought there would be, but no. I think a lot of the UK, I guess, compared to Malaysia, the pattern of mental health tends to be more related to substance use, because I think people there drink a lot more than, I guess, people over here. So they are related to heavy alcohol and drug misuse. Again, drugs are a lot more easily accessible in certain parts of the world. So there's, some of the patterns are a bit more different. However, in terms of the kind of things, I think because Malaysia is becoming a developing nation, there's more and more people experiencing all manner of stress, and more people actually seeking help for mental health and mental distress. Although, however, I do see, because in England and in UK, the dementia has been quite heavily promoted in terms of getting diagnosed, getting access, and getting support. We do see a higher proportion of people in a mental health clinic seeking help and diagnosis for dementia. But the government there has put in a lot of effort into promoting and getting people to access the help and support. And that's what I'm trying to do now, is promoting people to get diagnosed and get the treatment and get the support for the organic, conditions like dementia.
Very good. Thank you so much. Dr. Izwin, I have a question from someone who says, I haven't seen my mom in 6 months, due to the restrictions, interstate travels. Although we WhatsApp video call frequently, I can sense that she really misses me. This is where, again, the work culture today, the things that are happening, the confinement, the MCOs, trying to juggle between managing your work and your family balance and managing your elderly parents and your children. So what's your advice on how to engage with older people? And then we have a Salmin Bukhari, she has a question, says, do you offer online consultation? Yes, we do in Ara Damansara Medical Center. We have telehealth, which is a teleconsultation. You can go to our website and you can click, but only if you are an existing patient. I believe if you're a new patient, that's you could always come into the hospital. If you're out of the country, we could work something out with Dr. Izwin. That's not a problem. You can drop us an email. The email will be made available at the end of the session. Yes? Okay. So
yes,
tell me about
thank
how,
you.
Dr. Izwin, tell us, how do we deal with loneliness of elderly parents who are out of town, and those of us in town have not been able to meet them because there's lack of the physical contact, and old people tend to get paranoid about things like this.
Yeah, and I see this quite a lot, actually. Some of the older people come to my clinic as well, and I think they feel, the kind of stories that they tell are similarly that they can't see their families as much, They're missing their family. It's been, the MCO has been extremely hard. There's things that we can do to try and alleviate the loneliness. I mean, I think a lot of us do this already, which is regularly contacting them using video call. But again, some elderly people do struggle with certain technology. I mean, what I find in terms of sort of looking after my own mother herself, who's an old person, is also encouraging her to kind of talk to her friends, peers, people her own age, through the phone. Of course, I discourage visits. It might be that they might be in kampong and they're quite lonely, but because of the pandemic, I wouldn't encourage my mother to say, oh, go and see your neighbor, go and walk to the pasar malam or anything, and because I think I don't really want them to be at risk of contracting the virus. However, things like telephone calls with their friends can actually help. Try and get a bigger circle. It's very hard to try and organize things like Zoom classes or Zoom things for them. In an ideal world, if you live with your parents, and this is something I often suggest to my patients as well. If you live with your parents and you can help to set up Zoom meetings between them and maybe the people that they used to see on a social basis. So, for example, the Quran reading classes or day centers that they can do. Those are the kind of things that you could help as as the children of someone if you live with the person to help support their loneliness. But if they live alone and they live away, unfortunately, the way to help them is going to have to be through phone calls at the moment. But I can understand how worrying it is as a daughter or a son, or as a close family member about our elderly patients, because they're quite limited in terms of what they can do, and the risk of them, having quite a significant illness, contracting the virus is higher. So you don't really want to advise them to go and do things that are social in nature.
Yeah, that's very good advice. Speaking of advice, doctor, I was wondering if you could
Mm-hmm.
advise us on how social media is, while we are using the social media platform to pass this message along, how social media has negative impact on mental health. Are you of the opinion that
Um,
it has negative impact, or are you of the opinion is how people use it? What How would you advise us today to remain in good spirits mentally and emotionally? And because all you see on social media is all of us are saying is COVID, 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 COVID 24/7, right? It's
yeah,
COVID, it's
yeah,
this,
yeah.
it's struggling to engage. Hospitals are trying to, make sure that people get the message to stay safe. What is your thoughts? What sort of
Yeah, so
advice would you give us?
social media, I mean, it helps us, it helps keeps us informed. So it's a form of entertainment for some of us, so we don't really want to remove that part of the pleasure, of using social media. But it can have its negative effects as well. So the way that social media can have a negative effect is, for example, I guess if you read, if you're someone who's quite anxious and is quite vulnerable, you might find that reading too much into the COVID numbers, what's going on, new variants, everything that comes out can be very overwhelming and can have negative effects on your mental health, because you start to become quite obsessed, you start to become anxious, you start to think you've got it, you start to overthink and overread into things. However, if you use social media as a way of, reading the light entertainment, keeping yourself occupied, to laugh, to share with somebody videos that you like, then it can have a positive effect on mental health. I think where it becomes a concern, and when it becomes sort of a worry, is when the cyberbullying. So people giving negative comments about you on social media, people arguing each other in social media. I've seen sometimes when I scroll through, people just arguing back and forth about a variety of things, and that can have a stressful impact, especially if you're quite lonely and you're quite vulnerable, and there you are, kind of reading people, belittling your comments, for example. So that can have a negative impact actually, and kind of reading about what other people are doing, what other people are achieving. sometimes might make you feel a bit envious, might make you feel a bit inadequate in yourself. So, there's good and bad of social media. There's both good and bad, I would say, of you using social media, especially during this pandemic. But when you've not really got much else to do and you can't really go out and you can't go for a holiday or travel or go to the shopping mall, I think a lot of people do revert to using the phone and using social media and using the internet a lot more, because we've got less things to occupy ourselves at the moment.
So, what do you suggest that people should do to occupy themselves? We can do maybe
Um,
physical activities at
yeah,
home. What's
physical activities
what's
at
the
home.
take-home message?
Well, you can do physical activities. We can still exercise within our area, our home environment. Exercise is actually very good for your mental health. It releases
That's right.
endorphins, good happy hormones. It's always what I advise my patients to do. If you don't like exercise, you can clean the house. There's nothing more pleasurable than seeing a clean house. That's what I like to do. I'm not too big into exercise, but I like my cleaning. Uh, or you can keep cats, which is what I do. You've seen my kittens always interrupting my feed,
Yeah,
my
I
video
have.
calls.
I have. Lakon tambahan.
Belakang tambahan, yes, they were here before, but I put them in the room now so that they don't disturb me today. So there's things that you can do to kind of occupy yourself during the MCO. You can have video calls, talks to people, chats to people. You can there's a variety of things. You can pick up a new hobby, for example. You can pick
That's
up
right.
knitting, reading, watching Netflix, a new film, a new box set. Anything that's besides just sort of scrolling through pages and pages of social media, scare stories, vaccine stories, fake news. There's all sorts of things out
That's
there
right. That's
in
right.
social media. So there are always things that you can do, you can pick up.
Yes, which is what we want to do at Ara Damansara Medical Center, on our Facebook, on our Instagram. We encourage people to follow our Facebook and Instagram handles, especially because we actually have put up a competition, a contest, you know, at ADMC Fit Family. So if you take pictures of yourselves doing some physical activity and then you share and you like, you stand to win prizes. So this is a small way that we've been trying to reach out to the communities, Doc. But maybe some professional advice on yourself, some take-home message that people overall can. Because I read in some places, the first thing people do is open their phones in the morning, and they are flogged with all kinds of negative messages, news, this and that. I've read in some of this um, mental health support groups that the first thing you do when you get up in the morning is not to look at your phone. It's actually to do some form of meditation, and to calm yourself down. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's becoming almost instinctive for all of us nowadays to, wake up and look at our phone, and I'm guilty of doing that as well. Even though I tell people it's not a good idea. But yeah, you're right in the sense that we do need to find other ways, to get ourselves ready in the morning besides getting up and reading various news. And I think it comes down to just my take home message is just picking up different things that you can do. I think the problem is with the MCO and working from home is that we have more time rather than less time. Because we're not spending an hour driving to work nowadays. We got that extra time to read things. So it's about kind of filtering what you want to read. That's my take-home message. Read maybe the things that you feel are useful. But don't read everything. I mean, I joined several WhatsApp groups, and you do get a whole host of stuff being sent through, and you can't really read everything that's gone through. And it's the same with Facebook feeds and Instagram feeds. You just got to be able to learn to filter things through. Try and read things that comes from sort of trusted sources if you do want to read anything. But I guess it's also about kind of finding other ways to distract yourself. I've talked about hobbies, doing tasks, cleaning around the house. MCO is a great time to do some DIY work. Putting up some wallpaper, cleaning some places, getting the garden ready. I've got friends out there who's proudly showing off, the efforts of MCO, the plants that they've grown, over the last year. that we've had the MCO. So you can find things that, there are actually quite healthy and hobbies that are quite useful. That's beside looking at looking at your phone or your laptop.
Right. Doc, a question. You are a geriatric psychiatrist, but at the same time, you're a
Mhm.
psychiatrist, and there are lots of young people who are confined to their home and doing their studies online. And it's not the nature of young people to be sedentary. Yeah. Okay. So,
Yes.
are you open to seeing younger people at your clinic? Would you encourage parents to? Sometimes children may not be able to talk to their parents, and do you encourage them to come and seek professional help as an intermediary to acting between the parent and the child, perhaps?
I think yes, children, teenagers, do find it
That's right,
hard to
teenagers.
talk. Teenagers. I do see teenagers, but usually, I prefer to see sort of, age 15 and above. I do make the occasional exceptions, and I think it's because of kind of, in terms of managing mental health, can be quite challenging. I think in this age group. Usually psychological support is the mainstay. Finding the right therapist, I think, is key. Someone that the teenagers can open up to, because I think, having looked after a few teenagers, I did discover that, the difficulty is opening up to certain people. I think I guess there's few things, because I look after someone who's as young as 14, and I think because we share our love of anime and certain things, it's quite easy for me to talk to her. But I think, with teenagers, it's very hard to get them to open. But I've also got ones who are very guarded, and I think they take a few sessions to open up. And I think there's other ways of getting teenagers to open up. Things I would recommend, if they like arts and drawing, is finding an art therapist. So it doesn't have to be a talking therapist, seeing a counselor, seeing a psychiatrist. Some teenagers find it easier to open up doing a different type of therapy. For example, being able to draw their feelings or write their feelings. So please look into those kind of therapy if you've got a teenager that's finding it hard to open up. Because I was a teenager myself, although that was a very long time ago. So I can kind of relate how hard it is that time of your life when you're trying to find your identity and trying to find what you're comfortable with, but also dealing with external pressures from parents, friends. It's a very tough time.
I have a question here. This guy, Kevin Ho, says, "Good morning, Dr. Izwin. As someone who is reserved and has problems opening up to people, be it at work, relationships, or even family members, will this have adverse effects on one's mental health in the long run? And if so, how should I go about it as it affects my sleep?"
Okay, I think having trouble opening up it doesn't necessarily predispose you or means you'll develop mental health problems. There's a lot of very introverted people who get on very well in their life. I think opening up is a very difficult thing, because some people are more, some people find it easier to do than others. If you're very introverted, and I've looked after very introverted people, it is extremely difficult to open up to someone who you don't even know and you don't trust. The good thing about seeking professional support, which is probably what I would advise if you feel that you can't open up to your friends or your family or your colleagues, is that we have training on how to get people to open up. So I think we have ways and techniques to get people to talk, which may not necessarily be about their mental health at first, but we can gather those little bits and bobs of information that we need to make an assessment. And it's about finding, I think the key is finding someone that you can engage with. And it's someone that you feel that you can get along in terms of finding a therapist. I've got patients who say, they have to change their therapist a few times until they find someone that suits them. And that's absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's similarly to finding a friend. You
Yeah.
have to be able to click with the person. If they don't click with you, if they're not your cup of tea, there's no point in going on and persisting. You've got to be able to have someone that you can talk to and get along with. And in terms of, if it's starting to affect your sleep. I think I always kind of, it comes down to, I guess, the topic of when do you seek mental health support.
That's right.
It's probably when it starts to affect your life quite significantly. So things that ways that it affects your life is, for example, sleep, appetite, if you're losing weight as a result of your mental health, if you're having suicidal thoughts, if it's affecting your work, if you're underperforming at work or you can't concentrate at work, or you're finding going to work, we call it the Monday blues, where you feel that it's such a massive effort to get up to go to work on a Monday and you feel much happier on a Friday. Things like that can be early signs that something may not be going on too well in your life. And if you're starting to feel very low, very depressed, withdrawn, you're moving away from social, from any social contact with people, you're starting to notice it's having a physical effect. You can't breathe, you're getting short of breath because you're having panic attacks. So those are the times when you do need to seek mental health support. And coming back to Kevin's question, I think if it's starting to affect your sleep and it's starting to affect your life, it may be a good time to seek, to see somebody about it, whether it's a counselor or a psychologist. But please don't feel like, we don't sign a contract. I think everybody assumes that when you see us with like a facial contract or slimming contract, you've got to see us for 10 sessions, so we've signed you off for this many. I always say to my patients, no, we don't offer like a package. You don't pay like 1,000 ringgit and 10 sessions. That's not how we work. So if you don't like someone, you can always move to the next person. There's always different costs in terms of seeing different professionals. You can always shop around and feel, and see what's comfortable for you. So that there are options out there, and go by recommendations. That's probably one of my other suggestion. If it's someone that your friend knows or someone knows, that's usually quite helpful as well.
Right. I have a question from this guy, Asrul Akmal, and he says, has food intake any influence on mental health? Are there any supplements recommended for men to maintain good mental health? That's a good question, Asrul. Thank you.
That is a good question. Supplements are always a grey topic for me.
Right?
Mostly because supplements don't necessarily have, I guess, the robust evidence behind them. There are ones that I guess help. So in terms of what food that you take, yes, there's research into this. So we found, for example, Mediterranean diet is very good for mental health and also very good for preventing dementia. So we talk about Mediterranean diet. So if Mediterranean diet is food rich in fruits, vegetables, oily fish, as well as avoiding unhealthy things like red meat. And also they like to have a lot of nuts as well in their diet. So food that is quite healthy food is quite good for your mental health. There's some research suggesting that things like dark chocolate can produce some serotonin that can help with mood as a mood boosting effect. Not that I prescribe chocolates in my clinic. We don't have a chocolate shop outside our hospital. You can have free
So
chocolate.
really, doctor, does chocolate help with the mood? Does chocolate help the mood?
It does help with the mood. Dark chocolate especially helps with the mood. Not that I prescribe it, but if you want to give it a go, but be careful about the sugars as well, because sugars is not very good. It gives you a sugar rush, but it can also,
So
leave you
you
having
recommend eating fresh fruits, fresh
fresh foods,
vegetables,
vegetables, yes,
nuts, yeah,
oily
yeah,
fish.
less
There's
processed
also
food.
healthy nut. Yes, less processed food, less meat. So those are the kind of things that could help. So healthy eating, basically, lots of research suggests that does help with mental health. In terms of supplements, again, there is no, if you take this, it will help with your mood and mental health. I have patients that take magnesium for sleep, which was recommended by other specialists. It's not causing them harm. Seems to be helping them. I always say with supplements, if it's not causing you harm and you feel that it's helping you, then please continue. But in terms of recommending them, because the evidence around supplements is so grey, it's very difficult for me to recommend them.
Right. Thanks, Doc. I have someone called Jack. He says, how do I deal with someone telling me what to do? I personally get annoyed / irritated / stressed with this.
Right. Very hard to deal with someone who tells you what to do. I think I guess it depends on sometimes when you're faced with a difficult person. I always say to patients, there's two approach really. There's because I think what you need to do, something needs to change. That's always my take when you're dealing with a difficult person or a difficult situation, and that's kind of the key in mental health is that some things need to change for you to get better and improve. So in your case, you need to change, or this person needs to change, and I guess it depends on how much this person will accept your expressions and your criticism of his or her behavior. Sometimes having an open discussion can help. Other times that can actually just go really badly. If you can find someone, if it's something to do with work, and you feel that it's causing you a lot of stress and anxiety, you might find that having a mediator can help in terms of trying to talk to this person. So it may be someone from HR, it may be someone, a boss, someone who is probably of higher position than both of you. But if it's someone within your personal relationship, probably a bit harder to find a mediator, because finding an independent mediator can be very hard in a relationship. If it's your family, one of them will always take sides, so that can be quite tricky. And I think the other thing is, I guess it's also about kind of like, and if you can't change the person and you can't talk to the person, you'll have to look at how do you change you? How do you change the way what she or he says affects you? Because sometimes a lot of the time when you can't change the person, you may be able to change how you react and how you perceive what they say. So just being able to either, we remember when I talked about cognitive behavioral therapy and changing the way that you think, rather than think about the person saying things to you in a negative way and taking it personally, try and think about, well, why do they say these things? It might be because they're having a bad day, or they're trying to be, they're trying to criticize me, or they're trying to help me improve. So it might be, you might be looking at trying to change how you feel about the things that they say. But I think, with difficult interpersonal relationships, I always say there's not very much options apart from those two.
So Jack, I think, has got someone who's annoying him because he says, then how can I tell if that person has a mental health problem? So that's going to be a challenge.
That's going to be a challenge. Yes, please don't
Jack
tell
cannot diagnose that, Jack. I'm so sorry. But
Yes,
we are here. If you want to come and talk to Dr. Izwin, we are here, and she'll be glad.
I mean,
What else do
as
you
I
want to
mentioned
add
to
to
Jack
this?
before, yeah, so there's two things. I mean, as I mentioned earlier to Jack, if you feel that if you can't, if it's hard to tell whether this person, without him or her coming to my clinic and sitting there and I do all the questions, you can, it's and Googling doesn't help because it will come out with all sorts of weird and wonderful medical psychiatric diagnosis that this person has. But it might be, if this is affecting you personally, Jack, is that maybe, it might be a good idea for you to seek some health support in terms of just having an outlet to discuss how you feel about this person, how this person affects you. And I've looked after a lot of people who have been a victim of other people's behavior, bullying, workplace bullying. And because I'm aware that I can't change the person, the aggressor, but what I can do is at least support and help the person who's the victim as best as I can. And sometimes that might just be what is needed, because I think you can't. Sometimes people work with very difficult bosses, and it's actually not that easy to get the people that you don't like sacked.
Correct. All right. I guess that sums it up, Dr. Izwin. I want to thank you for your time. It was a very engaging talk. It's so good to have you on board, you know,
Thank
and
you.
we look forward to having you again. Yes, everybody, Dr. Wan Izwin Wanasan, happily known as Dr. Easy to many of us, okay, is available at Ara Damansara Medical Center. You can go to our website, make an appointment with her online, and she'll be able to engage with you. Dr. Easy is a friend to every one of us, and look out for this channel. Share share the video, share the likes, Ara Damansara Medical Center, and look out for this channel for more talks. We're planning to go on air every month with new topics and new doctors. Thank you so much, Dr. Izwin, and you have a great weekend. Thank you, everybody, for being on air with us. We're
Yes,
so
thank
happy
you.
to have you on board. We look forward to having you next time in July. Look
Yes.
out for the same, tune in to our live telecast. Yes. Have a good day, Dr. Izwin. Bye-bye, everybody. And
Bye bye.
nurses,
Thank you,
please
everyone.
check out for the next slide because there's a QR code for you to scan.